Yes, Mr. Young. This is Chris Mosier.
Hey, Chris.
Hey,
how you doing?
good day. Nice to speak with you. And, of course, I've got Fanboy Will, who you know.
What's up, buddy? Hey, man. How's it going? Oh, man, just the same old thing. How you doing? Are we on tape, or are we chatting beforehand, or what's going on?
We are officially on.
We are officially on?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
But Chris can always edit out the...
Yeah, we always edit out the beginning, circle jerk.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to run in the other room as usual. Talks among yourselves.
This is the part where he leaves me alone, and I get to make you feel uncomfortable. What is he doing? He's running into the next room to get to his, our high-tech studio for his, to get the audio working. Chris. Oh, yeah.
Hello?
There he is.
Yeah. Well, the way it works is I recorded via...
The audio wizard, so...
Yeah. High-tech. I just recorded through the speakerphone, and if I'm on mic, it doesn't sound as good, so I had to go in the other room and grab the phone, so you don't get all that, the back feed from the second phone and all that bullshit.
That's cool. I've done that kind of thing myself.
Yeah. Band-Aids and tape. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, no, some of the interviews that I did for the book, it's like, I'm all set up to record people at my job because, I interview people from the magazine that I work at, but at home, don't have anything like that, so I would just set up my recorder next to the speakerphone and then just go in the other room.
Yeah, same thing.
It kind of works.
Same thing. You use Band-Aids and tape, too. Hey, what paper you work for?
I work for a trade magazine that nobody ever heard of because you can't buy it on a newsstand. It's called Pro Sound News. It's a magazine for recording professionals and concert professionals, and I'm pretty much the concert sound guy. So if the Stones or Beyonce or whoever come to town, I pretty much interview their engineer and make them find out how they make the stars sound good even when they're having a bad night, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Ah, cool.
We can get into it later or now. You actually wrote a book on that, too.
Yes, I did.
So this is Mr. Clive Young, and he just came out with a book. Officially came out a couple days ago, I believe. What was the official date?
Yeah. Well, it's been all over the map. The official publication date is December 28th, but what that means is it's going to be everywhere absolutely no later than that date. I mean, if you're J.K. Rowling, then you have big release dates, and it's not out until that date. The rest of us, mid-list schmucks, that's the date where you're guaranteed to be out by.
Okay. And
so
the book is?
Over the next couple of weeks. After Thanksgiving.
Okay, officially. Places. Quote. So if I go into like Barnes and Nobles, there it will be.
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Barnes and Nobles and Borders, and Amazon kind of has a holding pattern page up right now, but you can pre-order it over at barnesandnoble.com, and you can get it at my publisher's website. So it's around, kind of.
You can get it on there.
Like walking to Barnes and Nobles and see it there in the film and TV section.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's where it would be.
Very cool. I'll do it. Next time I go in there, I'll get the camera phone ready and I'll take a picture of myself holding one.
That would be most awesome. Send it to me. I'll put you on the website.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'll do that.
Okay. Clive's also got a couple websites. You've got Fan Made Cinema.
Today.
Yeah, today, and then of course CliveYoung.com.
Yeah. And that's just my regular vanilla, author page type thing.
Yeah. So how'd you get into the fan films? I know you explain it in your book, but give us the Reader's Digest version.
The Reader's Digest version of it was like, I guess about 10 years ago. I was reading through Newsweek of all things, and they had this little one-paragraph story about this movie, Troops, that had been made, and I was just blown away. I was like, wow, somebody made their own Star Wars movie. And, and this is before Phantom Menace came out and everyone got tired of Star Wars all over again. At that point, it had been like 15, 16 years with no Star Wars. And it had gone away long enough that you kind of missed it, and you'd grown up and lived your life and whatnot. And I was kind of like, wow, I'd like to check that out. So I got on the web, and I discovered that this thing was going to take me about a year to download. It would take about a week to download this little picture about the size of a stamp. And I was like, you know what? I know how to get around this. I didn't want it. I knew I'd never be able to download it, so basically I tracked down Kevin Rubio, the guy who made it, and I interviewed him for an article for my magazine, in theory, because I write about pro audio, like professional recording and that kind of thing. And so I interviewed him about the sound work that they did on Troops, which turned out to be actually a really weird story that hasn't really gotten out there. But anyway, after I did that, he sent me a videotape of it. So yay, I had my proper videotape. I could watch it in the comfort of my own home on a TV set. So that side of it worked out. But I had all these great stories from all the people that I interviewed on his crew. And I was like, what the hell should I do with this? And at the same time, I was trying to learn how to do HTML and learn how to do a website. So if you're going to do a website, it has to be about something. So I decided, all right, well, I'll make a website about these fan films, and I'll interview people, and I'll find some others on the web. And that turned into the Mos Eisley Multiplex, which, that was, like, as best I can tell, I think I was the first fan film site that was not specifically just for one person's fan film. So that was kind of a cool thing. I didn't realize at the time, but I searched everywhere else for someone else who was doing it because I was kind of lazy and didn't want to do it myself. But as a result, it lasted for about a year and a half, and got written up in USA Today and the Los Angeles Times and different places like that. So it was kind of fun to do for a while, and then kind of got burned out of it and left it alone. And to wrap up the story, in the process of doing that, a lot of people have sent me videotapes of their movies over the years. And let's see, around 2005, the last Star Wars movie was coming out. And my wife, she's a librarian. She books all the programs at our local library, so she brings in speakers and this and that. She's like, you're a Star Wars nerd. You come up with something that we can do that's Star Warsy. And I said as a joke, oh, yeah, I should pull out some of those amateur movies that I had from, 7-8 years ago. She's like, yeah, that'd be perfect. That'd be great. I'll book a night of that. And it went over really well. We got 40, 50 people came into the library. And that kind of got me back into the fan film thing. And that was kind of exciting. So eventually I started doing the website again, and except I gave it a new name. I reinvented it as a blog with Fan Cinema Today, and got the book going soon.
Actually, one of my questions was going to be, I know you do a lot of lectures at libraries and stuff like that. Could you tell us about your very first lecture, film-wise, at a library, and how that went, how that experience was for you?
Gosh,
do you remember? Can you think back to that first one?
The first lecture that I did was, I got into doing the lectures because of my first book, Crank It Up, which was, I interviewed about 70, 75 rock concert roadies in the course of doing my job. And, the pro audio stuff. And I would interview, these guys who mix U2 and this and that. And then at the same time, every so often, I'd run into some guy who, would mix your local bar band. And they'd be like, oh, my God, I wish I could talk to the guys that you talk to, because I'd ask them this and this and this. And how the hell do I get out of this dump that I'm mixing in and get to, work for somebody really cool? And I realized I had all this info on my computer, so that should be a book. So I put together that book, and then, it's kind of a very technical thing, quite honestly, but I was under the delusion that maybe somehow if I did, author talks for it, that someone would want to buy it, and that was kind of dumb. But as a result, I got into trying to do lectures at libraries, and that went kind of well, and that got me thinking, well, this is kind of interesting, and here and there some libraries are actually paying me to do this. I should find some other things that I should talk about. So I started doing things about special effects and movies and music, that kind of thing. So the very first movie one probably was the fan film thing. Yeah, and then it was weird because I did two of them in a row, one night after another. And the first night I did an hour and a half, and by the end of that, we were all sort of in a stupor because there's only so much amateur filmmaking that you can take in one bite. And then the second night, it was this other library. We went for nearly 3 hours. People just loved seeing these things. Yeah, it was we just kind of walked out of there in a daze.
People like to watch these things? Seriously?
I was shocked how many people knew about them, though. That was the thing. Because they've kind of picked up in recent years, but just the sheer amount of people who actually were already familiar with Dead End and Troops and a lot of the classic fan flicks, it was kind of cool.
Yeah, I remember a long time ago, my buddy would come over. He would come over quite regularly, and just when I was learning what the hell a fan film was, and I'd be having some beers, he'd be having Coke because he didn't drink. But we'd be sitting there for all night just watching these little bits of, fan films. This is when I just got Roadrunner and stuff, but I do remember the Star Wars multiplex because we utilized that as well. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm glad that it was enjoyed.
No. Yay! So
how'd you? Because I was surfing all over the web saying I can't really find anything about fan films and enough sources to discover new fan films, and in that process, I came across the Mos Eisley Multiplex. So you were definitely one of the first sources for me as a fan film guy to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe I should start one too. So you were definitely a big inspiration when it came to the creation of Fanboy Theater. So
you were too kind. And Fanboy Theater, exactly. I mean, you have all the great. I mean, there's so many superhero movies that I don't know about, and every so often I'll go over and visit your site and go like, wow, that sounds really good. Oh, that one sounds good too. And just have all this stuff that I mean, no matter how many times I go there, no matter, I'll always, and I mean, your stuff is dense. I mean, because you have that really small type. I mean, you can spend like a day just going through like one page's worth of stuff.
He just calls you dense.
People are just like, I was looking all day long at work or whatever. I can't believe how many movies there are.
He calls you dense, Fanboy Will.
So I try to keep the world familiar and let them know what's going on and what's to come and all that stuff. So, I mean, I'm glad it's appreciated.
You remember the days how hard it was to find these damn things, and now you can just go to YouTube. But it used to be an adventure just to find the fan films.
Go like spelunking in Google for like
exactly. You do like remote like Batman amateur movie kids, Batman college film. Just looking at all these like different, just taking a stab in the dark. Just like maybe I'll get something, and then you'll hook something in. Like, oh wow, look at this. Yeah, it's definitely like treasure hunting.
Yeah, that was exactly it. Because like with Mos Eisley Multiplex, I found truths. I'm like, okay, these can't be the only guys who've done it. Yeah, and I found like some little thing of like this claymation Yoda thing, and I wish I could still find, like, all these things are long gone off the net. I wish I could find that one again. It was it was so difficult to put video on the internet that, I mean, YouTube's like only maybe 3.5 years old.
Yeah.
And we forget what it was like. I mean, if you made a fan film, if you actually wanted people to see it on the net, you had to build your own website, pay for the host. I mean, it was a complicated thing.
Right.
You don't think
that was like Dan Poole, like my friend introduced me to Green Goblin's Last Stand. And this was in college way back when, and I said, how am I get a hold of some of these fan films? How would I be able to see these fan films? So I discovered his site, and he was one of the few superhero fan films that were around that actually had a website.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool to be like, hey, this guy's got a website and everything. So it made it a little more official,
Oh yeah. I mean, and it had that little stop and start movie. They had like they go for like 6-7 seconds and then stop for like another 15 and then go for another 6 seconds. And it's like, yeah, and you can
just to get you like, hey man, I gotta watch the rest of that.
So with the book, I really got into finding all these people like Dan Poole. I had always wanted to ask him not so much what the hell were you thinking swinging off a building, but where were your friends? Why weren't they turning around when your back was turned and calling 911 saying, this guy's about to jump off a building? It's like, what kind of friends do you have? Are you people who hated you who had the camera? I mean, what's going on there? And so it was a lot of fun to track down some of these people and finally get to ask some of the questions that I've been really curious about. That, like, what possesses someone like Sandy Calora to spend $30,000 on a Batman movie? I mean, because more power to him. I know a lot of people really dig Dead End, and I mean, he's a hell of a visual stylist. It's the kind of thing where, I wrote a book because I was interested in fan films. That didn't cost me anything. I didn't spend $30,000. That's an incredible amount of belief in yourself. And that's really, I mean, I was really curious about what would drive somebody to do that. I mean, to invest that much in their personal vision of what these characters could be. And I walked away getting to talk to a lot of folks and find out what it was that drove them in that regard. It's kind of cool.
He had a lot of friends in the industry and everything, and that was, his playground.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no question.
So he had a lot of help.
One of the I guess motivating factors for making the book, the fact that there's basically no fan film books as far as I know out there.
There was. Yeah, I mean, they really. I mean, here and there's like a chapter in like 1 or 2 books, and I took a look at them, and I mean, once I started looking in like magazines and stuff, I mean, like every newspaper on the face of the earth has covered, say, the kids who did the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the adaptation, or there was a lot of coverage of say, Star Wars Revelations a couple of years ago. A lot of magazines and newspapers have covered all these, but there wasn't a book. I was kind of like, well, that's kind of the next step. And if I know so much about this, well, maybe I should be the one to do that before somebody beats me to it. So, there was a lot of hemming and hawing on my part. I wrote, when you propose a book to a company, you got to write 2 sample chapters and then a kind of an outline of where you're going to take the thing. And so I wrote the 2 sample chapters, and I was like, boy, these really suck. I'm going to put these aside for a week, and then I'll go back and fix them up. And 11 months later, I went back to them, and I discovered that they didn't suck. They were actually pretty good, and that I just kind of had cold feet about getting them out there. So I'd wasted a whole year. I could have been pounding the pavement finding somebody to publish it. And eventually that worked out too. So these Continuum Publishing took a chance on a book about fan films, movies that nobody's ever heard of, that nobody's ever seen.
Yeah, so you got some good write-ups going, I see. So that's definitely great,
Yeah, that's probably the most gratifying part of all, because the nice thing is that they're coming from sources like IO9, which I have ridiculous amounts of respect for. The fact that they would dig what I was doing is just kind of...
I'm kind of ashamed that I didn't even know about that until I read your little write-up on IO9. I didn't even know about them. And then I stopped by and took a look, and I was like, wow, where have I been this whole time? I didn't even know about that website.
Yeah, neither did Sandy Calora, actually. So because I mentioned it to him, like, oh, did you see the thing on IO9? And he emails me like, dude, call me up, and we had a good little chat about it. And I had to call up Aaron Schenke. Yeah, in the IO9 thing, they really paint him out to be a villain. So I mean, I don't know if he knows about it, but I actually called him up real quick and said, look, there's this blog. It's a big deal. So people are going to read this thing. They paint you as a villain. You're not like that in the book. So I don't want you to freak out and go like, what the hell did that guy write about me?
He's a villain? What the hell does that mean?
They kind of paint him as Sandy Calora's rival, and I don't think either of them would consider themselves to be rivals at all. They're kind of 2 separate sandboxes that both they both play with the character Batman. That's about it.
I don't see how they come to that conclusion. I've never read anything to that fact. They've never said anything to that fact. So
exactly. But the IO9 thing, God bless them for getting so much attention for the book. I mean, the review was read by something like 27,000 people.
Cool.
But, I know it's like my mind boggles even to say that number. But at the same time, they painted it a certain way, maybe to make it more. Give it a little more zip, a little more whatever.
Since you're a journalist and all that stuff and a writer, have you ever been part of a fan film as far as writing, scripting? Have you been part of production ever or anything like that?
I made some fan films before I knew what fan films were.
Okay.
I made one in the late 80s, which is kind of showing my age, for a college project. There's this author, Neil Stevenson, who wrote Snow Crash. He has a book that just came out called Anathem. And he, in science fiction circles, he's actually a fairly big deal. Back then, nobody knew who the hell he was. And his first book was this weird book called The Big U, which is basically all about this massive university that's in one giant building. And by the end of it, the entire thing just crumbles to the ground. It's a very strange little book. But one part of it is about these 2 roommates with massive stereo systems who just fight it out with these sonic wars against each other. And we had to adapt something for my film class, so I'm like, okay, well, I'll do it about those 2 guys. So I totally went to Hollywood with it and changed the ending, because in the book, one of them gets scalded to death in the shower, and they get revenge on each other by filling each other's beds with hundreds of cigarettes that have burnt down to the ash. And I wasn't going to do that to my dorm room, that kind of thing. So we changed it all around. But yeah, that was a fan film I did. I did one which is on YouTube. You can find it if you want, called many years later, like 10 years later. Bill and Ted Meet Silent Bob and Jay and Silent Bob.
I didn't even know about that one. That's good.
No, nobody knows about that one, and it's probably just as well. It's like a minute long. I had these dumb little action figure things or whatever, and I just got an iMovie and wanted to figure out how to use it. So I'm like, I know, it's dopey. It's the fun for me in it is so many people leave comments on YouTube, and there's so many you suck.
Yeah.
Bob and Jay should kill Bill and Ted. This kind of. I'm like, okay, great, dude, wonderful, knock yourself out. So like that. There was when I turned 30, I kind of had like a I panicked, like, oh, I'm turning 30. I got to be all grown up and responsible now. I really, got to get my act together. No more time for having, goofing around with all this stupid fan crap or whatever. And, not realizing, of course, that, gee, I was supposed to be responsible now, but meanwhile, I already was married and had a house and had paid my car. I was responsible. I just kind of failed to notice that. Right. So, as part of this general freak out, I said, all right, I'm going to make a Star Wars fan film. We made a really bad on-purpose fan film called Darth Takes a Holiday, which is all about Darth Vader calling in sick to the Emperor and then just just goofing around. So, goes to the beach. There's like a little risky business segment where he's like dancing around the house in his underwear. It's incredibly stupid, which is why it's not on the internet. Nobody needs to see it. But
you want to know something really funny right now? On my shelf, I have a copy of Star Wars Darth Takes a Holiday.
You're kidding me.
I had no idea you had anything to do with this film.
You're cracking me up.
All right, ready? I'm holding it in my hand right now. It's from a Doofus Film production, correct?
Holy smokes! How the hell did you get that?
I could do you one better. I could read to you the back just to prove that I actually have a copy of this.
That's
ready? This is Darth Takes a Holiday, an epic beers in the making. Darth Takes a Holiday follows the Darth Lord of the Sith struggle to take a little time off. Delve deep into the secrets of Darth Vader. See the place he calls home. See his everyday life. See him calling sick to work, just like you. Disclaimer, in accordance to the ASPCA, American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Audiences, this film is 100% Ewok and Jar Jar free.
Wow.
That's something like that. I have this thing on my shelf right next to my Star Wars DVDs. It's right here.
Oh,
you were probably like the inspiration for that Chad Vader thing.
I reviewed it. It's on FBT. I did a review of this film.
Right. I think I sent it to you.
Yep.
Oh my God.
That was like the first time we remember that? Like a long, long time we were corresponding through mail and stuff.
Yeah. Dark Ages. Oh my God.
Yep.
I can't believe I actually sent that. Wow.
Yep. And I watch it. I mean, I was taking this thing off the show from time to time. Be like, hey, check this out. Show people. Just to crack them up.
Look at this idiot.
It's great. Look at this guy dancing around in the Darth Vader costume in the park.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, that was my brother. Yeah, that's the great thing about a Darth Vader costume. You get, like any number of people, you need somebody to fill the role. You're like, hey, put this thing on. So the vast majority of it was actually my brother and my friend Elliot, because Elliot was a former drama major who now works for a computer company. It's like, dude, dress up as Darth Vader. No, come on. Well, okay. It took like absolutely nothing to get him to do it. It was wonderful. Yeah, do it. It's stupid stuff. The best part is when Darth Vader tries to eat a Klondike bar through the group.
Yeah, that was good. I like that one.
Anyway, so yeah, that is my background in the. You walked me right into that. You're like, hey, if you ever made a movie, wow, amazing, way to go, Will.
He's good. That's why he's my co-host. He makes me shine.
Tonight, you're like the sucker punch interviewer here.
We can always leave this part out if you want, right, Chris?
Yep. I'll edit that right out. Snip, snip.
No, yeah, sure you will. Yeah, edit it out. See, get it out of there.
Very
It's
fun.
not going to make the air. That's crazy. And it just hit me like, holy crap! Yeah, I have been talking to you forever. Like,
that's funny. Yeah, I forgot all about that. Wow.
It just like a bell went off in my head when you said the title. I went, huh? I was like, no, it's him?
You see, and the thing is, you're like me. You must be a pack rat if you still have that thing. I mean,
oh yeah, dude. I mean, if it has anything to do with fan films, I keep it like close to my heart. I have like this collection of stuff I've burned, stuff I've gotten at conventions from people, stuff I've requested, stuff that's been sent to me for review. I got like a collection full of just fan film stuff.
That's amazing. I every so often people send me like a DVD or something. Like I got a Star Trek one the other day from Canada, like Chains of Betrayal, I think it's called. And this stuff, unfortunately, just kind of like piles up because I don't have the time to watch it all.
Yeah, I hear you, man. It gets a little overwhelming.
So, like, and then there's these ones which are apparently a big deal, which I've never even heard of. Like, I saw one the other day called Tomorrow's Memoir, which apparently is a really well-known fan film. I never.
That's a really good one. Yep, that was on iFilm.
Yeah, I finally, I I downloaded it, and then it was sat on my computer for like 2 weeks till finally I had a couple of free minutes. It was a good little flick. I mean, a little slow here and there, but yeah, it's amazing because there's just so many movies that you think you've seen them all, you think you know generally.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's this movie. It's been around for like 4 years. Everyone else apparently knows about this thing. I'm like, damn, where the hell have I been?
And I'm telling you, that's the great thing about fan films. Like, looking around the corner could be this little piece of gold that you've never even seen, you know? And then you find it, you're like, when was this made? Like, in 1980s. Like, the other day, on YouTube, I discovered 2 Blade Runner fan films. I don't know if you're familiar with them, from the early 80s. I believe it was 80, like, I forget what year Blade Runner came out. What was that, like 83 or something?
Like 81, I think, or maybe even 80. I mean, it's.
And I saw the 2 movies, and the guy's like, yeah, I made them shortly after watching Blade Runner. So I checked them out, and I was like, you know, really primitive and kind of silly, but it was just cool to be like, hey, man, besides, you know, the old Star Wars fan films from back in the day and the Raiders of the Lost Ark adaptation, all those older fan films, there's also all kinds of other things out there that are from, you know, back in the day.
Oh yeah.
So it's further proof that these have been going on for a long time.
Oh yeah, and that's definitely one of the things that I kind of get into in the book. I mean, Andy Warhol made fan films.
That's right.
Hugh Hefner made fan films, which blew my mind. Because if you picture a teenage Hugh Hefner making films in his basement, you don't picture it being a fan film, man.
Definitely not.
But it's like, yeah, come on over. I'll wear my pajamas and we'll make horror movies. But
it's Superman with more boobs in it. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a picture, I tell you.
So yeah, no, there's all kinds of stuff. There's this guy, Robin Sparstow, who's up in Connecticut. 89-year-old guy. He is so much fun to talk to. He's in the book, and we still trade emails all the time. And he made a Tarzan movie when he was 16 in 1936.
I know. I remember reading that in the book, being like, there really has been fan films forever, officially.
And nowadays he has it online. Boing Boing did a write-up on it back in the spring, and it's been seen by like hundreds of thousands of people now as a result. So many people read Boing Boing, and yeah, people just make these things and they go on for. And that particular one is a really cool story because it became this dumb little Tarzan movie, which is really cute to watch, became like this family heirloom for them, and they would pull it out every Thanksgiving and set up the projector and this and that, and like almost 40 years later, they made a sequel in 1974. You know, just the people in the family. So now they're all like, you know, these 10-year-old and 16-year-old kids are all like pushing 50 and stuff, and their kids are in it. It's actually like, I mean, it's not what you typically think of, because like you think of like fan films, you picture like, you know, like a Santa Clara film, like, you know, people duking it out and this and that.
Yeah.
And instead, it's like this heartwarming story, kind of like about, you know, this family and how they kept them together and all this. And but you know, it's a different aspect of what these movies can be. I mean, they can be more than just merely like, hey, here's something that we did for an afternoon, and you know, just the way we spend an afternoon making a movie. It's sometimes they take on a life of their own.
And then you have that Our Gang fan film.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that was something to discover. The funny thing about that was, you know, the Art Gang fan film was made in 1926 down in Anderson, South Carolina, and I wrote about this thing without getting to see it because the only copy that exists of it is in the University of South Carolina archives. So I interviewed the professor who found it, he didn't know about fan films.
Right.
So he just thought it was interesting because he studies itinerant filmmakers, which is basically a nice way of basically saying vagrants with a camera. Back then, these guys would just like tour around the Deep South and do like, you know, just take some like newsreel footage and then send it into Hollywood, and maybe it would wind up in like the newsreels that would get sent out to the cinemas, and you know, they'd make a couple of bucks. Well, these two particular guys who were working under pseudonyms went into this town and basically said, hey, you know, we're actually from the Hal Roach Studios, which makes the Art Gang movies, and you know, we've been sent out to cast the next batch of Little Rascals, and hey, you know, we'll cast your kids in our sample movie that we're going to send back to the studio if you sponsor it. It was basically a scam, and it's not really clear. It's kind of, I mean, you read the research and stuff, and it sounds like maybe the people in the town knew they were being scammed, but kind of went along with it anyway, so they could see themselves up on the movie screen. But basically, the local movie theater paid for these guys to make the movie, so they made it really quick in like 2-3 days, and showed it, and then like beat it out of town. But it takes on some interesting aspects to it because, well, like I said, I never got to actually see it. So I interviewed the professor, and I wrote it all up, and I read the research and stuff. And I was like, boy, I'd really love to see this thing. Well, I finished the manuscript, and I get in contact with the University of South Carolina, and I really wanted to see it. I'm like, well, hey, could I get a copy? And they're like, well, it's like $100. And I'm not getting paid enough for this book to be able to say, yeah, sure, I'll spend the $100. Yeah, and all beyond that, I'm just astoundingly cheap. So, but then it came down to like, well, I really need a photo to go along with the story. They're like, oh, well, do you know what part of the movie you want? We'll take the still for you. Do you know what part of the movie you want? And I was like, well, no, I've never seen it. They're like, okay, tell you what, we'll send you a DVD of it. I'm like, wow, okay, sure, all right, that's good. We'll send you a DVD of it, and you can make the still yourself. Well, okay. And I finally got to see the thing. What I discovered was like, I don't know why the little light bulb never went on over my head or something. But, gee, it's a movie starring the Little Rascals, and, the Little Rascals always had, they always had a buckwheat or a stymie, or in this case, Farina, who's one of the earliest Little Rascal characters. This thing is made in the Deep South in the 1920s. Well, I don't know why it never occurred to me. This thing was, like, revoltingly racist. Yeah, I can imagine. You don't think of the Little Rascals. You think like, oh, cute little kids getting into mischief and stuff. And yeah, and it's not really. I mean, it's not like people are like beating up the kid or saying something really. Well, there's a couple of cases where it's a little obnoxious, but it's one of those things where it's just like, wow, just the fact that the total acceptance of it just kind of blew me away, and that was really one of the things that. For the more academic side of the book, because I mean most of the book is really how people made their movies and this and that, but some of it gets into a little bit of theory, and that was really one of the things that I tried to bring across in the book. I don't know how well it did, but that when you look at these older movies, like you can read about the Little Rascals and you can watch the Little Rascals, but you're seeing it through the eyes of somebody in 2008, 2009, whenever, whereas you see something like this. You're seeing how those people saw the Little Rascals because it's their reflection of what it was, how they saw it, and what it meant to them. So it's their interpretation of what was current, media to them, and it gives you. I feel it gives you kind of a very different perspective to this media that we've all kind of taken for granted. So, and that kind of gets a little heady, I suppose, but it's not really that deep in the book.
There's a chapter in the book where you talk about basically, pretty much an unseen fan film, a Spider-Man fan film, Spider-Man versus Kraven the Hunter. Can you talk about that a little more?
That one I've actually not seen, believe it or not. That's a really cool one. That was like, I'm pretty sure at this point that's the only movie in the book that I never got to see. And I was going to run into Bruce, the guy who made it, when I went out to L.A. earlier this year, and it just, nothing worked out. But that was a really interesting one because Tommy Ramone from the Ramones actually was involved in making that movie. It was a pretty weird thing. This guy Bruce was making movies for a class in NYU, and he talked the teachers into saying, look, instead of making an art film or something, let me make something full of special effects and Spider-Man and this and that. And back then, they were really more into like avant-garde, this and that. They weren't really into emulating the big box office type stuff that you see today. But they went for it, and they said, okay, yeah, go ahead and make this student film. He started making it, and it went pretty well for him. And he wanted to continue making this thing. So he got a job working at a place that made commercials back in the day so that he could use their editing equipment and stuff. And the person who's in charge of letting people use the editing equipment and also he also ran the Bicycle Messenger section of it, was Tommy Ramone. Tommy Ramone, at that point, was not a member of the Ramones. The Ramones were going to start like about a year later. But they hit it off, and the guy making the film, he needed to use some of the sound studios that they had at the commercial house, to film some of the stuff. He snuck him in there when nobody was looking, that kind of thing. So Tommy Ramone was actually a big part of making this little Spider-Man flick. And what was most interesting about it was that Stan Lee actually was involved in it. You know, the creator of Spider-Man. The guy, Bruce, he had gotten Lee's permission to make this flick. And, in fact, they even wrote it up in Foom, which was a Marvel fan magazine back in the 70s. And thank God that they wrote it up, too, because, like, he talks in it about, oh, well, this person and this person and this person, like these famous comic book people, had, saw it and they encouraged me. And, I through friends who used to work at Marvel, I tracked these people down. They basically said, I don't remember it. No, nobody remembers actually seeing this movie. And if it weren't for the fact that it appeared in Marvel's own magazine, there'd probably be no way to actually verify that, any of the stuff that Bruce told me was true. So.
It'd be cool to check it out. Hopefully one day it'll surface somewhere, some forum or on maybe YouTube or something.
He really plays it close to the chest with this kind of thing. I mean, it was like, hey, you can send me a tape of it or whatever, and I promise I won't give it to anybody. But quite understandably, he's just kind of, I want to hold on to it. He really is still hoping to this day that he can talk Marvel into releasing it maybe as like a DVD extra or something.
That would be cool.
Yeah, the plausibility of that happening, who am I to say? I don't know. But, at the least, I hope to see this thing someday because, it was based off the first appearance of Kraven in the comic books, and I always liked that story. So,
is there any fan films in the book that you had to that you chucked? Any stories you had to chuck? Maybe you couldn't collaborate or corroborate any of the information or anything.
One story that made it into the early edition of the book that is not in the final version of the book.
Is it in the advanced reader's copy? Did you say?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we've got it.
And there's, there were, not only was there no way to corroborate it, but I also made some mistakes in the story, in recounting the story. And when I discovered that, I'm like, there's just too many problems. So, and it's like the readers didn't lose anything. But
okay. So there's not any big chunks of the book that you left out.
No, at worst, it just keeps people from getting pissed off at each other, and that's a good thing.
Well, that's fine. It's not a book that you're supposed to be pissed off at somebody. It's,
yeah, exactly,
how they made their films and their mindset at the time. What I thought is really interesting is that as you went through the years with the fan films, you not only discussed the fan films, but you discussed the technology behind them, which was interesting. I think any independent filmmaker that doesn't know what the hell a fan film is could take a lot from that and the stories that each individual filmmaker had.
Yeah, it was kind of a thing. It wasn't really what I intended to do, like following. This is when a Super 8 camera came along and that kind of thing. But once you start talking to some of the guys who've been doing it, who had done this back in the 40s and 50s or whatever, you start realizing the limitations that they were dealing with and how creative they got to try and work around them. And it's pretty impressive the kind of brain power and effort that they put into it, but you can't really just say that. You kind of have to explain why this is a big deal, that, they were able to do stop motion in their basement or whatever.
I think that was a good choice because, as I'm reading it, I'm going, oh, yeah. Especially we got to the point in, like, the 70s and the 80s, especially the 80s when I got my first video camera. It's kind of going back to when I was making my stupid movies. How you were talking about the technology and everything.
I remember being in high school playing around with like the little video editing system that they had at the public access station, that kind of thing.
I don't know if you talked about it in your book, but there was a Aquaman fan film. I can't remember if you put it in the book or not. From like maybe the 70s.
That's right, the college one. I believe it's from Florida.
Do you know anything about that?
I've never heard of this. Tell me about this one.
I don't have a lot of information. Probably Fanboy Will knows more than I do.
I could give you something. This guy, for his college film, for his film class, made an Aquaman fan film. I believe it was University of Florida, or it's either a school in Florida. I don't have all the information, but that's pretty much the gist of it. And he made this little fan film. It got distributed on VHS like here and there at conventions, and then it just kind of like died out. And I haven't been able to get my hands on it, but I know it's out there floating around, and I've been trying to grab it here and there, and I can't get a hold of it. So
it's been discussed.
But if I do,
I'll
definitely, I'll definitely talk about it in SBT, and I'll, if I can, I could send you guys a copy so you can check it out.
I know I've heard of some floating around. Like there's a guy in Australia making one that shot like half of it at an aquarium. And like, there's these really cool-looking photos, to be fair, on the net of him like running down like this glass tube, like it's like one of those tubes that are under the water, so you can look all around you at the sharks swimming around and stuff. And the way they shot it, I mean, it's a good looking photograph. I mean, it looks kind of ridiculous in this, blonde wig, but
I know what you're talking about. That's the one. That's the one from Capture Entertainment.
that rings a bell. I bet you're right.
He has the long hair, and then you see Mira's there with him, and you see him running. He's got the trident at one point in like this crazy pose.
Yeah.
That's it. It was believed. It was supposed to be released in, I believe, 2006. So I don't know if he's still working on it or if it's abandoned or what.
Yeah, like so many fan films get abandoned. It's a shame because like a lot of them look like hey, I'd definitely watch that, and then you find out nothing ever came of it.
Yeah.
I know. I hate that. There's so much of that. Like I have to go to SBT and erase a lot of stuff. I'm like, oh, this is completely dead. The link, So I go and I do a little sweep in here and there to get the the fan films that really didn't quite make it. But some of them leave footage on the web, which is cool. Like a lot of abandoned, especially I noticed Batman fan films that never get made. A lot of them turn up on YouTube. A lot of them. You can go on YouTube and spend all day just checking out abandoned Batman projects. There's so many of them.
Yeah, it's true.
You got some free time on your hands. You like Batman? Go on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
All right. They're all over the place. Like there's what's his name? Nick Ortiz, this guy in the Bronx. I wrote about him on Fan Cinema today about how he was making one called Batman Reborn, where
I read that, yeah.
And now because he was reading the thing that I wrote up about, I wish this thing had been made, got him so jazzed about it, he decided to go back and actually finish it. So
yeah, I looked at that. I mean, I remember when the first trailer whatever came out, and I saw it and I said, hey man, that looks really cool,
Yeah, like the guy drives up in the Escalade and the whole bit. Yeah, it looked like it had the potential for to be a really good flick, and it's just kind of like, it's a shame that one didn't happen. So, plus, I mean, I just like the idea of reinventing some of these characters. I mean, because you'll get that to some extent from DC, but it's always very, it's very by the book, that kind of thing. Whereas, these other, when you get a fan filmmaker in there, you get someone's absolute personal vision, no filter, no commercial considerations, And I mean, and that has its upsides and it has its downsides. I think eventually something like that is going to come back to bite fan films in the ass. Because, for instance, right now all these companies, most of them are pretty laissez-faire about it. They're like, okay, well, we'll consider it to be like free advertising, and so long as people don't make money, blah blah blah. But the truth of the matter is, it's because almost every single fan film out there, in one way or the other, is a tribute to your character. Now, say somebody goes ahead and makes like a really good quality looking, let's say Superman, and where like Superman, let's say he goes crazy because of kryptonite and he starts using his heat ray to like blow up babies or something, and you have like a really disgusting graphic, baby blowing up or something. Let New York Post or Fox News get a hold of that, and you watch how fast that some of these studios start changing their tune. And I think sooner or later that's going to happen. I mean, right now it's a good thing. It's benign. It doesn't hurt anybody to say, yeah, go ahead, use our characters or whatever. Sooner or later somebody's going to make a really good fan film, good quote unquote, which is harmful to their billion-dollar franchises, and this tune is going to change. Either that or they're going to have to come up with some very specific rules about what they're going to allow and not allow, which is kind of what Lucas did with the Lucasfilm fan film contest, which
I was actually going to say, especially in the Star Wars world. I mean, you look at, you're not too happy with the new films that came out, and you're like, let me check out what these amateur guys are doing. And a lot of their stuff is far superior.
Well, Kevin Smith's making a Star Wars porn movie. Why didn't Lucas get pissed off at that? It is his new movie that just came out.
Oh, the Kevin Smith thing, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a lightsaber.
Because in the movie, the people that are, they've got to pay their rent, and to do that, they're making their own porn movies. They actually make a Star Wars takeoff porn movie in the.
That's right, back in Mirror, yeah.
So where's Lucas putting his foot down there? I don't know if they can do anything about it. Is my point, I guess. If it's a parody, Lucas can't really do anything about it, anyways. And like you say,
there's a lot of layers to that. I'm sure that they must be. I mean, in that particular case, I'm sure they got some kind of okay or signing off on it, because the Weinstein Company put out Zack and Miri, and they're also putting out Fanboys, which was, shot up at the Skywalker Ranch.
Yeah.
If I remember my useless trivia right, I think Kevin Smith actually got married on the Skywalker Ranch. So I'm sure there's a certain amount of like if they need to get this cleared, they know who to call or something to that effect.
But how do you think they can stop something like you just explained, Superman blowing up babies and whatnot, and it's a fan film? How can the intellectual properties actually put a stop to it?
I don't think they can. Because what's the best they can do? They can say, take that off right now, and even if the filmmaker complies, I think you looking on your shelf and finding Garth Takes a Holiday is proof positive that no matter what you do, stuff is always going to get out there, and that's it. So this it's with the internet and everything now. I think it's very hard to keep things put Pandora back in the box, so to speak.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web in his eyes, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. This is strong, this is good. He's got radioactive blood. Can't sleep from a thread. Take a look overhead. Here there goes the Spider-Man. In the chills of the night, at the scene of a crime, like a streak of light in your eyes, still time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. When the man is ignored, action is his reward. Look out, here comes Spider-Man. Look out! The chill of the night.